Hey photographer, welcome to the Financially Focused Photographer. I'm your host, Tiffany Bastian, accountant and tax pro for photographers who's obsessed with helping you keep more of what you make. Let's be real, you didn't become a photographer to spend hours deciphering tax code or tracking expenses, but here's the truth. Mastering your money is what turns your passion into profit. Each week, we'll skip the Google rabbit hole and get right to the answers you actually need. We'll also explore your relationship with money and how it might be holding your business back. From solopreneurs just booking their first clients to established studios hitting major revenue milestones, my mission is simple: to help you understand the numbers game so you can build real wealth doing what you love. So hit subscribe, tune in each week, and let's get financially focused. Hey there, and welcome back to the Financially Focused Photographer. I'm Tiffany Bastian, and today we're diving into one of the most confusing, frustrating, and frankly anxiety-inducing topics for photographers: sales tax. I'm not exaggerating when I say this topic dominates my world. Our sales tax pages are consistently the most visited pages on Bastian Accounting's website, and our state-by-state sales tax guide is hands down our most downloaded resource. I'm pretty sure I answer at least one sales tax question a day across the board, whether it's to a client, it's inside the Financially Focused Collective, which is our membership, inside of our free Facebook community, Financially Focused Photographers, or on my website in the chat. I'm constantly answering sales tax questions. But here's something that concerns me. I see many photographers in Facebook groups and other social media asking about sales tax and getting advice from others who reside in completely different states. The problem is that advice doesn't even apply because the rules are so different from state to state. What's true in California has absolutely nothing to do with what you need to do in Texas or New York. And I totally get why this topic generates so much confusion and anxiety. Sales tax rules are complex. They vary dramatically from state to state, and let's be honest, figuring out sales tax compliance isn't exactly what inspired you to pick up your camera in the first place, right? But here's the good news. While sales tax can be complex, understanding the core principles and setting up the right systems makes it manageable. And if you're behind on sales tax, don't panic. In the next episode, we're covering state amnesty programs that allow you to work with the state to get caught up and get compliant and actually waive fees and penalties. So if you're behind, you definitely don't want to miss the next episode. So make sure to subscribe. By the end of today's episode, you'll have clarity on what you need to tax, how to collect it, and how to stay compliant without losing your mind. So let's simplify sales tax for photographers once and for all. Let's start with the reality of why sales tax matters, especially if you've been putting it off or hoping that it just doesn't apply to you. Sales tax affects photographers in 45 states. And here's something that catches many photographers off guard. Some states that don't have sales tax actually have local jurisdiction taxes. So even if you think you're in the clear because your state doesn't have a sales tax, you might still have obligations at the city or county level. Sales tax is a trust tax. When you collect it from clients, you're holding that money in trust before remitting it to the state. Essentially, you're acting as a collection agent for the government. The money was never yours, and you're temporarily holding on to it. This distinction is important because sales tax liabilities are treated differently than income tax issues. If you fail to collect and remit sales tax appropriately, you could be held personally liable for those funds, even if your business is an LLC or corporation. The corporate veil that might protect you from other business liabilities does not apply to sales tax. Let me repeat that. The corporate veil that might protect you from other business liabilities does not apply to sales tax. Super important. Here's another point that many photographers miss. Sales tax is never counted as income or an expense. It's a liability that's recorded on your balance sheet. As you collect sales tax, the balance goes up. When you file and pay sales tax, you'll put that payment against the balance on the balance sheet and bring that balance down. This is just another reason why having proper bookkeeping with full financial reports, including a balance sheet, is so important. If you're only looking at a profit and loss statement, you're missing critical information about your business's financial health. I've seen this play out with devastating consequences. One portrait photographer we started working with had been in business for 5 years and had never collected or remitted sales tax. She was unaware. She thought because she was a service that it didn't apply to her. We started working with her to get her compliant and caught up for today, and then she was audited for past years. So it's important to understand that the state is not going to send you a sales tax bill or an amount that you owe them. They'll audit you, and then you need to compile all your records and documentation before they assess fees and penalties. In her case, she received an assessment for over $15,000 in uncollected sales tax plus fees and penalties. Since she hadn't collected the taxes from her clients originally, this came directly out of her pocket. Another one of our wedding photographer clients faced a complicated tax situation as she traveled to various states to shoot destination weddings, but had no idea that each state has its own rules for sales tax, especially when you're traveling into the state. We helped her get organized, and we're now tracking all income by state to report everything properly and keep her compliant. If you're not registered and you're not sales tax compliant, the state can see who files taxes. And there's something on your tax return called an NAICS code, which tells them your business is photography. Well, if they see that you're filing a tax return, and they know that you're a photographer, and they know what the sales tax rules are for photographers in the state, you might be hearing from them. If you've registered an LLC, the state knows you exist, so they may also reach out if you registered like today for sales tax, but your LLC was formed 4 years ago. The state will put 2 and 2 together, and they may audit you back to when your LLC was created. They'll say, hey, you're collecting sales tax now, but what was going on for the past 4 years? So you want to be mindful there are other things at play here. It isn't just that you're hiding from sales tax. They can figure it out. The bottom line is ignoring sales tax doesn't make it go away, and the longer you wait to address it, the bigger the potential liability becomes. The good news is that getting compliant now can protect you from these scenarios. And if you're already behind, there are amnesty programs that can help, which we'll cover completely in next week's episode. Before we dive into photography-specific applications, let's cover the basics of how sales tax works. Sales tax is a consumption tax imposed by states and local governments on the sales of goods and certain services. The key points to understand: all states tax tangible items. Tangible means you can physically touch it. Physical products like prints, albums, and USBs are universally taxed in all states. 35 states are destination-based. This means the tax is based on where your client receives the product or service, not where your business is located. This means you'll be tracking different rates of sales tax for different clients based on where they receive their items. If you ship them or they're digital, it will be their home address. You can see how staying organized is important when managing various rates and needing to pay sales tax in various jurisdictions. 11 states are origin-based. This makes it a little bit easier. This means that the rate is based on your business address, which means you'll have one rate for all of your clients, making it a lot easier to track. Delaware, Hawaii, and New Mexico are special cases. These states have something similar to a sales tax, but it's more based on your total revenue rather than items sold. You can grab the link to the guide in our show notes at bastionaccounting.com/episode-005. Okay, so then services like your sitting fee. Some states don't tax services at all. Some do tax services, and some may say services are non-taxable. However, they will call out and say, but specifically, photography services are taxable. So again, you need to be really clear on what your state says. Digital products have their own rules. The taxation of digital files like images you deliver electronically varies dramatically by state. More states are taxing every year. Georgia just started taxing the digitals in January 2024. States are getting hip to the digital world, and you better believe they want their cut. You can see it's very intricate. We cover all of this in our ultimate state-by-state sales tax guide for photographers, so make sure you grab that link out of the show notes. Now that we've covered what might be taxable, let's talk about where you need to collect sales tax. Sales tax collection is required when you have Nexus. Nexus is just a fancy way of saying you have sufficient connection to a state. Traditionally, this means having a physical presence, like an office, employees, inventory, or you're physically going to the state, which in many photography scenarios is the case. However, following the 2018 Supreme Court decision in a case called South Dakota versus Wayfair, states can now require businesses to collect sales tax based on economic activity alone. This is called economic nexus. We go into this more in the guide as well, but essentially it's about you could be in California, but if you're shipping enough stuff into another state, they can say, whoa, you are hitting the threshold and you have to register and pay sales tax on that. You may have heard this called the Amazon tax, because think about Amazon. They are distributing to many states, so now they charge sales tax on everything for that particular reason. The Wayfair decision primarily impacts photographers who do significant business across state lines. For most portrait photographers who work locally, you'll typically only need to worry about your home state. However, for wedding photographers who travel to multiple states, or commercial photographers with clients nationwide, or photographers who sell prints and products to customers in many states, multi-state compliance becomes more important. Let's look at some common scenarios. Scenario 1, a local portrait photographer working exclusively in their home state with local clients. Generally, they only need to register and collect sales tax in their home state, assuming that they're in a state that has sales tax. Scenario 2, a wedding photographer who travels. If you photograph weddings in multiple states, you technically need to understand the sales tax laws in each state where you perform services. This doesn't necessarily mean you'll need to register in every state. It depends on the specific state's rules for occasional or one-time sales and their economic nexus threshold. Scenario 3, online print sales. If you sell prints or products through an online platform to customers in multiple states, you may need to collect sales tax in states where you exceed the economic nexus threshold. However, if you sell through a marketplace facilitator like Etsy, and I think Got Photo and a couple other actual online galleries are going to this marketplace facilitator where they actually handle the sales tax, then that's going to make life a lot easier on you. But you want to be clear with the platforms you're using who is supposed to handle the sales tax. Is it you or the platform? The key is to assess where you have Nexus and then understand the specific taxability rules for your services and products in those states. So let's get practical about how to actually implement sales tax collection in your photography business. So number 1, you want to determine where you have Nexus. Based on what we've discussed, identify the states where you have sufficient presence or economic activity to create Nexus. Step 2, understand each state's rules for out-of-state photographers. You need to know what each state's rules are for out-of-state photographer traveling in. We cover this for each state in our guide. Some states will have you fill out a form each time and say if you have more than 3 shoots within a 12-month period, then you're required to register. They're all different. This doesn't automatically mean you need to register, but you need to understand what triggers registration requirements in each state that you're working in. Step 3, register for sales tax permits where required. Based on your research in Step 2, register for sales tax permits in the states where you meet their specific requirements. This is typically done through the Department of Revenue's website. When you register, you'll be assigned a filing frequency, typically monthly, quarterly, or annually, based on your expected sales volume. New businesses often start with a quarterly filing. Step 4, set up your systems to collect sales tax. So once you've registered, you need to implement systems to properly collect sales tax. This includes configuring your invoicing software or CRM to calculate sales tax and collect the correct amount. Ensure your contracts mention sales tax collection. Set up your bookkeeping system to track collecting sales tax separately. Remember to configure tax rates for each jurisdiction where you collect sales tax. Many states have local sales tax on top of the state rate, so the actual rate can vary by city or county. Step 5, know when to charge sales tax. Apply the rules we discussed to determine which components of your packages are taxable in your state. If only a portion is taxable, you may need to break out taxable and non-taxable items on their own invoices. Step 6, report and remit on schedule. File your sales tax returns and pay the collected sales tax according to your assigned schedule. Many states now require electronic filing and almost all offer online payment options. Even if you had no sales tax, though, make sure that you report $0 for that period. 0 returns are required, otherwise the state will assume that you had sales tax that you did not file and they will assess a late fee. Let's look at some common mistakes I see photographers make with sales tax. Number 1, assuming services aren't taxable. Many photographers assume that because they're providing a service, sales tax doesn't apply. This varies dramatically by state. In many states, photography services are explicitly defined as taxable. Mistake number 2, not charging tax on digital files. Digital products, including electronically delivered files, are taxable in many states. Don't assume because there's no physical product, there's no tax liability. Mistake number 3, inconsistent application. Applying sales tax to some clients but not others creates compliance risks and can trigger audits. Be consistent in your application based on state rules. And mistake number 4, missing filing deadlines. Late filing of sales tax returns typically result in penalties and interest. Even if you've collected the tax correctly, set up reminders so you are filing on time and not paying late fees. What if you realize you should have been collecting sales tax but haven't been? First, don't panic. There are pathways to compliance that can minimize penalties and interest. And we have a complete episode coming up next week on amnesty programs that allow you to work with the state to get caught up and get compliant while waiving fees and penalties. Many states have an amnesty program that offers something called a VDA. This allows your business to become tax compliant voluntarily. These programs typically limit the look-back period, how far they can actually make you pay, and reduce or eliminate penalties altogether. At Bastion Accounting, we've helped numerous photographers through these programs over the years. We've seen penalties and interest completely waived, turning what could have been a financial disaster into a manageable situation. The catch is that you usually need to approach the state before they contact you. Once you receive an audit notice, those programs are typically no longer available. In fact, we'll be covering the details of how to navigate these amnesty programs in next week's episode, so be sure to subscribe. Some businesses choose to start fresh by registering and collecting properly going forward. This approach doesn't resolve past liabilities but prevents the problem from growing larger. Remember, addressing the issue proactively almost always results in a better outcome than waiting for the state to find you. Okay, so I've pulled a question from our free community. Today the question is, I shoot about 10 weddings a year in neighboring states. Do I really need to register for sales tax in each state, even if I only work there once or twice a year? This is a great question. Technically, the correct answer is that you need to follow each state's rules for the services and products you provide there. However, there are some practical considerations. First, check if the state you're shooting has exemptions for occasional or isolated sales. Some states don't require registration if you only do a few times a year. Second, assess whether you exceed economic nexus thresholds in these states. If your total sales in a state are below their threshold, which is typically $100,000 or 200 transactions, so most likely you aren't hitting that threshold, you may not need to register. The state-by-state guide I mentioned earlier will give you this starting point for understanding all of the state's rules for whether you're traveling into them or in your home state, so make sure you grab that guide. All right, so this week's homework is to conduct a sales tax compliance checkup for your photography business. 1, identify where you have Nexus. List all states where you physically perform photography services, have clients, or sell products. 2, research taxability. Use our state-by-state sales tax guide to determine what aspects of your photography business are taxable in those states. 3, verify registration status. Confirm you're registered in all the states you're required to be and set up a tracking plan to know what you should be taxing and how you're going to track it so you can remit and pay it to the state. As we wrap up today's episode on sales tax, I want to leave you with this perspective. Sales tax compliance isn't just about avoiding penalties and audits. Though that's certainly important, it's about building a professional, sustainable business that stands on solid legal ground. When you properly collect and remit sales tax, you're demonstrating a commitment to do business the right way. You're protecting yourself, your family, your clients from future complications, and you're creating peace of mind that allows you to focus on what you do best, creating beautiful images for your clients. Sales tax may never be the most exciting part of running your photography business, but with the right systems and knowledge, it doesn't have to be the source of anxiety that it is for so many. Remember, compliance is a journey, not a destination. Tax laws change, your business evolves, and maintaining compliance requires ongoing attention. Be patient with yourself as you navigate this complex area. If you found value in today's episode, please leave a review and share with a photographer friend who might just be freaking out about sales tax right now. And don't forget to subscribe so you get next week's episode where we'll dive deep into those state amnesty programs I mentioned and how they can help you get compliant without the crushing penalties and interest. You can also enjoy our free Facebook community by searching Financially Focused Photographers on Facebook, and the link is also in the show notes. Until next time, I'm Tiffany Bastian, reminding you that a profitable business and creative fulfillment can absolutely coexist, even when you're dealing with sales tax.